Hey, what's up, everyone? Buongiorno, bonjour, hola, hello. So, um, it was the night of the 10th of the 17th of June, 2017, 6/17/17 AD. I was at the Cutting Room live music venue and bar in the heart of Manhattan, New York City, New York. I was there for the last live public performance by the co-founding drummer of KISS, the CATMAN, Peter CRISS. Love you, Peter. Love you, man. Um, so long story short, it had been prearranged and pre-discussed months in advance with, at the time, who was his official webmaster, Ralph Asbury, owner, founder, president of Lunar Moth Entertainment out of Central New Jersey, who is an informal, off the record, behind the scenes co-captain of my Legion and team. And I love you, Ralph. I love you, man. I cannot state enough what Ralph has done for me. And what a gift and reward and honor and blessing to have Ralph come into my life. Seriously. Okay. But that's another video log just devoted to Ralph Asbury of Lunar Moth Entertainment. So long story short, we discussed me coming out to the KISS Expo that was being held on the 10th of June, 2017 at the Hotel Penn, right there across the street from Penn Station, around the corner from the Penn 1 building, rather the MetLife building, and Madison Square Garden, where KISS will be performing its last two live concert performances tonight, this Friday night, and tomorrow night, Saturday. Right after a 50-year run for an entire half of a century. So, with that said, and I am going to contact the very top 7 to 10 members of my KISS LTD Dynasty Legion, who are based throughout Manhattan and the boroughs of New York City, New York. It's way late, very late to contact them, but I'm going to nonetheless. Anything is possible with me. But anyhow, so I'm at the Cutting Room the following weekend of the KISS Expo. Peter CRISS and I had met in person finally at last, that 10th of June 2017, in the ballroom on the top floor of the Hotel Penn. Then Ralph took photos of Ralph Asbury, then took photos of Peter CRISS and I next to each other, next to the KISS Dress to Kill album street lamp, the very street lamp that is the front to back album photo cover of the KISS third album, Dressed to Kill, that was released in March of 1975. The personal photographer of John Lennon, of the Beatles, and Yoko Ono was the one who took that photo and supplied them with the suits that they wore in what's the front to back cover photo of Dressed to Kill, which features as its last song the rock anthem, Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. So at the time, Ralph was Peter CRISS, the Catman of KISS's official webmaster. And the site he had mentioned me multiple times to Peter about multiple things that I'll get to through various video logs. And one of them was me coming out from DC, Arlington, Virginia, DC, to New York City, New York, to meet with him. And also, Ralph took a photo of Peter Criss, the Catman of KISS, and I, right at the very main entry entrada door of Jimi Hendrix's recording studio, Electric Lady Studio on West 8th Avenue in New York City, New York, which is the very site of where Lydia Criss, the ex-wife of Peter Criss, the Catman of KISS, and Peter, first met Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley for the first time back in what I believe was the summer to fall of 1972. That was placed by Peter, that read, experienced drummer, played with all types of acts throughout New York City, New York, and willing to do whatever it takes to make it. So Gene Simmons picks up the phone and calls the number in the classified ad. And it was actually Lydia Criss who picked up the phone because she and her husband, Peter Criss, had just moved into their apartment in Canarsie, the Canarsie neighborhood and section of Brooklyn, New York City, New York. And the Catman of KISS parents were there putting up wallpaper with her and Peter. So Lydia picks up the phone, and it's Gene Simmons for the first time. And he says, I'm calling about the classified ad that we saw in the back of Rolling Stone magazine. Is Peter there? So Lydia then passes the phone to Peter. So I think like the next day, Peter and Lydia caught the metro, the New York MTA train from Canarsie, Brooklyn to West 8th Avenue. They then walked up the steps, looked across the street at the original location of Jimi Hendrix's studio, which was on the very far end corner of West 8th Avenue. And as Lydia described in her book, Sealed with a Kiss, there they were. She saw Gene and Paul standing across the street for the first time. And she said when she first saw them, she knew there was something big around them and that these guys were going for it. So why am I mentioning all of this? Because Lydia Criss, a year and a half before Peter Criss's webmaster, Ralph Asbury at the time, prearranged everything on the phone with me and took a photo of the Catman of KISS, Peter Criss and I, at the street lamp. Lydia Criss took me to the KISS Dress to Kill street lamp a year and a half before on the cold wintry night of January 9th into January 10th, 2016. So 10th, 2016. So I first went to the KISS Dress to Kill lamp with Lydia Criss herself. Her lifetime employer is the very icon who picked up John Lennon's clothing items and eyewear spectacles only hours after his death in front of his wife, Yoko Ono, with Yoko Ono sitting in the passenger seat of his car. He's the one that drove Yoko to the police station just minutes from the Dakota building of West 72nd Street, building 1, West 72nd Street. He drove, same guy that took the KISS Dress to Kill album cover photo is the same iconic photographer who drove Yoko Ono to the police station to pick up John Lennon's clothing items and glasses in a brown paper bag only hours after what happened. Why is this a part of this video log? Because that's Lydia Criss's lifetime employer who took me to the KISS Dress to Kill street lamp and the KISS Loft building where KISS was founded and formed on the night of January 9th, 2016, up to and through the twilight of January 10th, 2016. That's why. So now, with all of that said, I'm at the Cutting Room Bar. It's the 17th of June, 2017. It's the following weekend after meeting with the Catman of KISS, Peter Criss, at the Hotel Pin, having photos taken of us at the KISS Dress to Kill street lamp, having photos taken by Ralph Asbury of Peter Criss and I at the front entry door of Electric Lady Studio. having the administrator of Peter Criss Japan take photos of me standing next to Peter in Studio A inside of Electric Lady Studio. Having being videotaped by Mike Brunn of the Rock and Roll Experience, of me standing next to Peter and I engaging in conversation in Studio A with all the other members with all these KISS Army Nation chapter members around us. Okay. So it's now the 17th of June, 2017. So after his performance, I step out, and as I'm out there, guess who's standing out there? One of his longtime friends and collaborators, Paul Shaffer Paul Shaffer, the bald-headed guy with the very cool spectacles. He would always wear the cool glasses. The conductor for the CBS Orchestra for the David Letterman show, who was also part of the Saturday Night Live band, and I believe the Blues Brother band, as in the cult classic movie, The Blues Brothers. Right. Okay. So, Paul Shaffer was out there. He's longtime friend of Peter Criss, the CATMAN of KISS, and a collaborator. He collaborated with Peter on his album, I think called All for One. Right. So I'm engaging with Paul Shaffer. So I'm engaging with Paul Shaffer. We're talking to each other, right? And we're going back and forth. And I remember, like, once upon a time reading that I think the name of his band was called The World's Most Dangerous Band, the Paul Shaffer Band. And I was letting him know, hey, Paul, I've got Elvis Presley's this. I've got Elvis Presley's music director. I've got James Brown's former personal drummer. I've got Aretha Franklin's last keyboard sax player, Bob Marley's former guitar player. He just couldn't believe it. He was like, really? I said, yes. He said, wow, that sounds great. I said, it's incredible. I said, and I'm actually here because this was all prearranged and pre-discussed with Peter's webmaster, Ralph. So, and I forget all of what was said. And then while Paul Shaffer and I were talking out in front of the cutting room, the current guitarist of the Spaceman, Ace Frehley of KISS, walks out, who played guitar for Alice Cooper. So he walks by me, and I says to Paul Shaffer, Paul, can you just give me a minute or two? I just want to say something to him real quick. Would you stay here and wait for me? He says, okay, I'll wait for you. I've got a few more minutes. He actually stood there and waited for me. Paul Shaffer of the David Letterman show, head of CBS Orchestra, of the Saturday Night Live band, and of the Blues Brother band, literally said to me, I've got a few minutes to spare. I have to go, but I'm going to wait for you. And stood there and waited for me. Yes. And we had never seen each other before. So then I walk over to Richie Scarlett, who at the time was the guitarist for the Ace Frehley band, as in the co-founding electric lead guitarist of KISS, the one and the only spaceman of KISS, Ace Frehley. And he played for Alice Cooper, so I went over there and talked to him. And I didn't mean to be disrespectful or rude to Paul Shaffer, but I was like, oh my God. I turned around and Paul Shaffer was still there waiting for me. How freaking cool is that? So he looks at me and goes, hey man, I waited for you, but I really have to go. I said, God, I appreciate what you waiting for me. I said, listen, Paul, what's the best way to contact you? He said, just hit up my official Facebook page. I see it all. I said, but how will you remember me? Oh, I'll remember you. I'll remember you for sure. I said, all right, man. I'm Jorge Estrada. It was a pleasure meeting you. You'll be hearing from me. Well, that was 6.5 years ago. I never reached out to Paul Shaffer or contacted him through his official Facebook page, but I will. I will contact him. And it wasn't because I was dissing him or purposefully being disrespectful. It's just when I said to him that I would follow up with him, and I got back to DC and Arlington, Virginia from New York City, New York, I had no idea that right after that, this is facts, right after I got back, that June 17th of 2017, I still had 183 Facebook friends and about 10, about maybe 5 to 10, I'd say about 7 to 10 members of the very top of pop history on my team and with me out of my city, the District of Columbia, Estrada, and of the DMV area and region. I didn't know that once I got back, that it would go from 183 Facebook friends to nearly 5,000 Facebook friends, with over 1,000 of them, with over 1,000 plus members of the KISS Army, that I would be surrounded by a vast majority of the KISS LTD team and dynasty, now my KISS Dynasty Legion, and that I would go from 10 titans and giants and colossals and gargantuans of pop recording history to 800 plus as Facebook friends of mine, and all the rest that happened to me. So it was never my intent to diss him and to not follow through with what I said I would do. But it just, when I got back, it's as if though this nuclear mushroom cloud just went into hyper overdrive and it just never stopped. So here I am now, 6.5 years later. After I finish these video logs, aka vlogs of mine, of Nuke Doll Clearism Eternal, and my Time Business News written Q&A interview answers are posted on timebusinessnews.com. Should be by next week, according to me, and to my legion and my team and its webs and nets and threads and its pantheons. But I'll get on top of my publicist about that and her link, her plug. I'll do an entire separate video about that, and then I'm going to share it with her. So, and post it on her timeline. I am, and I'm going to save it and archive it. So so I'm down to what I call the last 5 points of Nuke all of them and all of it of theirs that never should have been, etc., etc., etc. Now it's eternal endism. So now the 5 points are down to 2.5 points. I'm inside the 2.5 points mark, which is the completion and wrap up of these 146 video logs for starters. Then I'll be down to 2 points. So the anthology storytellers showcase performances of 6 set lists. One of the set lists created for me again by the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley's former music director of Elvis Presley's Sweet Inspirations, while wearing on and off throughout the set list performances the customized right-handed crystal glass glove that was made for me by one of the customized clothing costume glove makers and designers for the king of pop, Michael Jackson, and his brothers, the Kings of R&B Soul Pop Thriller Victory Tour of 1984, and featuring the guitar pick, customized signature series guitar pick that was placed in the palm of my hand, this very right-handed palm Robbie Krieger of The Doors, who wrote Light My Fire and The End, for his fellow bandmates, John Dinsmore, Ray Manzarek, and Jim Morrison, put his guitar pick in this hand, this same right hand that will have the crystal glass glove Victory Tour replica on it, made by one of Michael Jackson's former glove makers of the Thriller Victory Tour. So there you go. So anyhow, here we are. So once I get these last, once I get down to, I'm now down to, I had, it's called the 5 points of nuked all clear as a material. I'm down at the 2.5 mark. Once I get down to 0, I'll reach out to Paul Shaffer through his official Facebook account page, like 6.5+ years later. Okay. All right. But man, he was very cool. He listened to me, he engaged with me, and he stood there and waited for me for at least 5 minutes. It even got to the point where he said, "Hey man, I waited for you, but I've really got to go." How nice, huh? I know, how nice. That same night, inside the cutting room, I got such a great look and nod of recognition and respect and acknowledgement from Rod Stewart's former drummer, who co-wrote the song "Do You Think I'm Sexy" with Rod Stewart. Co-wrote "Do You Think I'm Sexy" with Rod Stewart. And who was the last drummer to sit behind John Lennon's last live public performance in New York City, New York, Manhattan in 1975. Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge, who also laid down drums for Ozzy Osbourne of Black Sabbath and Paul Stanley, the star child of KISS. As a matter of fact, when he was in Vanilla Fudge, there was a band called Led Zeppelin that opened up for them. That didn't last long. I think Led Zeppelin opened up for Carmine's band at the Fillmore East in New York City, New York, in Soho, in the Lower East Side, actually. And after that show, my understanding is that Led Zeppelin never opened up for another band ever again. Yeah. I mean, you know, what are you going to do? They stepped on stage and they just towered, you know? So, love you, Scarlett. I can't tell you what an honor it is to receive 3 direct RSVP exclusive invites from the historic, legendary rock photographer daughter of Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, Scarlett Page. Love you. You frickin' rock. I can't wait till we meet in person. I can't wait to have a photo taken of me by you. I can't wait to meet your father, and it would be the biggest and greatest honor if I were able to do lay down lead guitar. That would be like the ultimate for me. Okay. But I will follow through with Paul Shaffer. Most certainly. Okay. I will. You know, it's interesting because John Belushi was a close friend of Peter Criss, the Catman of KISS, and his wife at the time, Lydia Criss, the same Lydia who took me to the KISS Dress to Kill street lamp that night of the 9th of January up to the twilight of the 10th of January, 2016. But John Belushi groped Lydia Criss while he was hanging out with them at their Stratford, Connecticut house. So the Catman of KISS, Peter Criss, grabbed his gun, his firearm, and chased them. And if I have the story right, I think that the Catman of KISS was bare-chested and barefooted, and he chased John Belushi out of his estate. Because while he was in a separate compartment of the house, John Belushi groped Lydia from behind in the kitchen. So they never hung out with John Belushi again after that. And that's interesting because the night that John Belushi died, he was visited by Robin Williams at Bungalow 3 of the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles off the Sunset Strip. And at that time, Robin Williams was best buds and bromates with Ace Frehley, the spaceman of KISS. So they went everywhere and did everything together. And why that all matters in this equation is because I have a flyer that was produced for me by one of my very first guitar players, Louis Sherman, the grandson or great-grandson of General Sherman of the U.S. Civil War, out of Bethesda, Maryland. And on that flyer that Louis Sherman graphically designed and printed for me for a show of ours in 1998 was signed by Robin Williams, "May the Farce Be With You" to me when I was approached by Robin Williams inside the Phillips Collection in DuPont Circle, Northwest DC. And above that is the Catman of KISS, Peter Criss's signature. So it's pretty wild stuff. And then redirected back to when I was out front of the cutting room with Paul Shaffer of the CBS Orchestra for the David Letterman Show, and formerly of the Saturday Night Live Band and the Blues Brother Band. So you see how it's all connected, right? So I will follow through with him. If not 2023, I definitely intend on following through with him early 2024. All right, man. Jorge Estrada, DC. Di Servitatio Formulae, the Roman Emperor of nuked all clearism.